Hi everyone, Sajid Amit here, and welcome to my review of three different DACs. It's not much a review, it's mostly a stream of consciousness, and it's not going to be a long one. Some of you might have seen my review of the Mola Mola Tambaqui, which I'm very enamored with, which I'm blown away by, and I've claimed it to be one of the best DACs I've ever heard across any price point because the DAC has amazing coloration and tonality. And I use the term coloration in a good sense because I find this to be neutral but still very lively. So that's basically the coloration that I allude to. Now I have here the Laiv Harmony DAC, which is a $2,700 DAC, which has been all the rage on YouTube and elsewhere. So I wanted to get this in and see what this was about. I also have something here which I'm not going to be able to lift up. You can see the sort of metal plating here, right? This is the Terminator, the latest Terminator, which is, I'm just going to see the front plate just to be sure. It's called the Terminator 2 12th anniversary edition, right? So it's actually written 12th one. It's a hugely heavy DAC. It's a very humongously heavy DAC. So the Laiv is of course not as heavy, and it's just a very beautiful piece of kit. The black and gold really suit me. I like this sort of color combination. The black is has a bit of a soft touch to it. The gold is really well finished. I mean, the level of finishing of the Laiv DAC is second to none. The Denafrips also look stunning. That's one of the reasons why I got it in. I think the silver Denafrips Terminator is a beautiful DAC. I love the look in terms of the letterings and the buttons on the front plate. I mean, it's unfortunate I can't lift it up and show it to you because I don't think I'm strong enough as of yet. I just wanted to, share some thoughts on how this fared when I AB'd these three DSCs, and I had this little switcher box from Little Bear with me. So I was literally switching between all three DACs just to figure out what these sounded like. I got this from Amazon. I finally got a switcher box. And I'm also getting an upgraded switcher box from Brian of Zin Sonics. So anyway, I just wanted to get these in because the Terminator 2 is a DAC that I've enjoyed in the past. At a time when I had the Holo Audio May, I have been told that because I used to like the Holo Audio May, which is a bit different now because I don't think I would like it as much if I listen to it now. People told me that I would like the Laiv Harmony. And finally, I got the Mola Mola Tambaqui, and I still have people writing comments about how all DACs are snake oil, and you just don't get any improvement in with DACs after a certain price point, about $200 or what have you. So of course, I know that to not be true. I still wanted to challenge myself by getting cheaper DACs because that is a $13,500 DAC. The Terminator here is a $7,600 DAC, so about half the price of a Mola Mola. And then, of course, the Laiv is a third, I think, of the price of the... it's less than half the price of a Terminator. So this is $2,700. Oops. The Terminator 2 12th anniversary edition is $7,600. So it's more than 2 times the price, almost 3 times the price. And then you have the Mola Mola Tambaqui, which is double the price almost of a Terminator 2. So so I AB'd them using an OTL, which is an output transferless amplifier, a tube amplifier, which to my ears sounds more revealing of source chains and track deficiencies than solid state amps do. And I use headphones. I use a number of headphones. I use the Focal Clear. I use some Meze headphones. I use some Hyphaman headphones. And what I found, honestly, was not very surprising. So what I found is that Mola Mola Tambaqui is still in a very different league. It is perhaps, of all these three DACs, I think it's fairly neutral, but it does sound livelier in the sense that you do get a better sense of microdynamics and macrodynamics, so small gradations in volume changes, or large swings in sort of, the loudest part and the quietest part of a passage. So you get a little more life in with this DSC. You also get better technicalities. You get a visceral sense of increased resolution, and these are low-level signals. You just get a sound with more pizzazz, a sound that's more realistic. You just get better nuances with every instrument, and nuance is the best way of describing resolution, I think. So you get all that. So this held its own, and it didn't take me more than a track or two to figure this out. And the more I listened, and of course, certain tracks will not reveal differences between DACs as well as other tracks will. So you might take a few tracks to sort of, get a sense of these differences. And I did. And the differences were significant by the time of my ABing over the course of several hours. This is still amazing, right? Now, I want to talk about the Terminator because I was to some extent, I liked the Terminator. It's a lot more colored, this version of the Terminator 2. It's very warm. And in my chain with my chain, I don't think it was a good fit. It's still a fun DAC. It's still a DAC that I thought gave me a lot of naturalism or naturalness, perhaps, in terms of how instruments were presented. I got very good imaging with the Terminator. I got very good layering with the Terminator, classic R2R layering. I got a pretty large soundstage with the Terminator. The soundstage does rival that of the Mola Mola Tambaqui. But I wasn't a fan of the fuzziness, of the fuzz, and the sort of lack of clarity that I get when I switch from the Laiv harmony to the Terminator. It's not fuzzy at an absolute level, so it's not going to fuzz out your system so much that you hate it. I do think that if you have a bright transducer set of transducers, whether speakers or headphones, you will like this DAC. But I don't have a lot of bright stuff on my system. So for me, this was a bit gooey for me. It was a warm, gooey affair. Very tube, classic, vintage tube amp-like sound. So if that stuff appeals to you, and I know it will appeal to a lot of you, then this could be your jam. Technicalities-wise, it wasn't a huge step down from the Mola Mola Tambaqui, but it was noticeable enough that I missed the resolution. And I missed the clarity, and I missed the dynamics, especially. The dynamics of this, and usually the NFIPS DACs are fairly dynamic and punchy, especially the Terminator has been, but this is a different level of dynamics. And I think a lot of Mola Mola reviews haven't done justice to how dynamic this DAC actually is. People associate Rockna DACs with dynamics, and this is up there, guys. The Mola Mola Tambaqui is extremely dynamic and punchy. Now, so that was somewhat surprising because I was expecting to like the Denafrips more, and I wasn't so certain before going in that these differences would be laid bare so easily. But they were. The differences were, significant. And I did use the same interconnects, and the same power cables with all these DACs and all that, if that matters. And of course, the same amp. Now, volume matching was done by ear, but it wasn't because of volume matching, because the coloration change was significant. So nothing, I think, these differences could not be attributable to volume matching. Like the colors of these DACs are as different as, let's say, orange is from green, right? So now, to talk about Laiv harmony DAC, this was also surprising because honestly, guys, this has been raved about, but I'm not sure people have raved about this enough because this is a fabulous DAC. And I would take this over the Terminator at half the price or less than half the price or almost a third of the price, because the resolution here, I thought, was almost at the same level as the Terminator, biting distance. The coloration here was more natural than the Terminator. It's not warm, the Laiv, it's just ever so slightly laid back. And you only hear it when you AB it with the Mola Mola on some tracks. Like the Chris Cornell track, Call Me a Dog, it's a great song, laid bare the fact that this is ever so slightly more languid in presentation. The stage is a bit further away from you. Like the Holo Audio May, but unlike the Holo Audio May, this does not lack in sub-bass or bass extension, because the Holo Audio May, I was so enamored with it because it does staging so well and it's so natural sounding, almost too natural sounding, the Holo Audio May, that I was, when I owned it, very oblivious to how its treble was rolled off and its bass was just not as tight. After hearing better DACs, when I went back to the Holo Audio May, the bass seemed a bit flaccid, a bit unimpressive. It punched, it didn't have the firmness to the punch. And you'll only know this if you've AB'd the Holo Audio May with other DACs, better DACs. And a lot of times Holo Audio Mays are so stuck on their DACs because it's a beautiful looking device, it's a stately looking device. is affordable compared to other DACs. It's fairly resolving, and you can use HQ Player to make it even more resolving. And I know a lot of you will sort of write to me and say that maybe I haven't unleashed the best of Holo Audio May because the HQ Player software does unleash the Holo Audio May to a different level of DAC power. All that I understand, but I have used HQ Player for most of my time with the Holo Audio May. But this deck has a better tonality than the Holo Audio May because it's not as pushed back in stage. The bass is firmer. It's almost similarly laid back, but the treble has more sparkle, whereas the Holo Audio May had a very rolled off treble, which wasn't to my liking. So overall, I think I would take this to the Holo Audio May even, although the Holo Audio May does have a better stage and perhaps slightly more resolution. So if I were ranking these DACs on resolution, which seems to matter to a lot of you because that somehow is a subjective take on technical performance, and for a lot of you, you want to understand how much resolution you're getting so you understand how much bang you're getting for your buck. If this DAC is a 10, the Mola Mola Tambaqui is a 10, then the Terminator is a 7, and the Laiv is perhaps a 6.5. And a Holo Audio May is perhaps slightly better than a 7, maybe a 7.25. So I think the Holo Audio May is more resolving than the Terminator. And the Laiv is within biting distance of the Denner Phipps flagship in terms of resolution. And the other thing I'll talk about is tonality. I think tonality-wise, I would give this a 9.5. Now, the Terminator, I think, is perhaps, for my tastes, around a 6.5 or a 7. And the Laiv is perhaps an 8, a solid 8. So it's got a beautiful tonality. And what I think is important to mention is that although the presentation of the Laiv is slightly pushed further away from you, not too much like the Holo Audio May, the vocals are still sort of centered and forward in that pushed back presentation. So the vocals don't sound recessed, which is lovely. As a matter of fact, on certain tracks, my Mola Mola Tambaqui sounded slightly more V-shaped than the Laiv because the vocals are actually forward in the mix. So it's interesting what these guys do. They push back the presentation, but they push forward the vocals. So it sort of compensates for the pushed backness, which the Holo Audio May doesn't do. So on certain tracks when there's no vocals, in parts of the track where there's no vocals, this will sound very deep. But then vocals also sound intimate, which is a wonderful combination with the Laiv. The bass is particularly impressive because the bass here is almost at the level of a Tambaqui, which is saying a lot. And overall, you do notice that this does not resolve the level of a Tambaqui, but you're okay with it because the tonality is what it does well. And tonality-wise, this might be one of the best DACs on the planet, which is why despite owning a $13,500 DAC, I think I'm going to keep this DAC. It's just amazing, guys. So yeah, I mean, build quality-wise, all phenomenal. Looks-wise, it's subjective, but I think they all look stunning and beautiful and look very different from each other. And of course, value for money-wise, guys, it really depends on how deep your pockets are and your spending habits. Because if you want to get the best, you spend, right? And that's just how it is. DACs do make a difference, and I haven't always, when I began the hobby, I didn't always understand how much of a difference DACs make. But if you ever A/B these three on my system, you'd know DACs make a phenomenal difference. Sajid Ahmed signing out, and stay tuned for my next one. Bye-bye.